So I think we'll go ahead and get into the main meat of our conversations tonight. Is there a specific topic that you would like to start us off with, Shaka?
Sure. Well, the title's Sweet Loot, so why don't we talk about loot tables?
Okay,
Ooh.
awesome. Um, so we have this conversation from Reddit on loot tagging, or loot rights. And this comes from user IAM_14U2NV. And they're talking about how previously it was stated, and on the wiki it is stated that the first party to obtain a tag on a mob or a boss will gain approximately 5 to 10% edge over competing parties in terms of total damage done when determining looting rates. At the beginning of the fight, the party at the highest damage, at the end of the fight, the party at the highest damage done, including first tagging bonus, will be granted the looting rights. And their concern is, what about the tank main and healer people, right? The tank healer support section. Like, if they don't get the initial tag on a mob and a damage dealer does, or if a group with more damage dealers compared to the tank healer support group gets the initial tag, then it's pretty much /GG for the tank healer and support player or group of players, and they may as well move on to something else. What are your thoughts on that?
You pose an interesting conversation there. Well, one thing is every glass cannon, which is DPS, right, is going to die if they don't have a healer in their back pocket. Just saying. And if they want to maximize their DPS, they're going to need a tank who's going to place the mob and hold the mob from going and squishing your DPSers. So the thing is, Ashes gets a little tricky because there's no locks, right? So anybody can go and start beating on this mob. So that does make it tricky. I think for people who are grouped up together, whether it's in a raid or a group, should all be equal. Whether you were the one that did 1 trillion versus the one that did 100,000, or you were the healer who healed the most versus the healer who just did cures, so they don't get tagged for a lot of heals, right?
Right.
So I think everyone within the group in the raid should be completely equal in what they get from the loot rights or the loot quantities, because they work together as a team to take that mob down. I think where it gets tricky is when you have other people join in, right? And I think that whoever initially started the encounter with the mob, let's say there's raid A or group A and they're taking down an avatar out in the world, the Cyclops, right? And then group B or raid B join in the middle of the fight or after the fight already started. So the group B did help take down the Cyclops, right? But group A started it. And you know what? Getting it going and starting and getting over that initial issues that always occur whenever you first pull, a mob, a boss mob is going to be difficult. So group A should get maybe, 10% more than group B, just because they started it and they initiated it. And it's not like they started it and then everybody wiped and then group B stepped in. Do you see what I mean?
Right.
So I think that's probably, but group B should still get part of it, because you know what? Who knows? Group A might have been beating on the Cyclops all night and never killed him, and people start logging off to go home. So group B definitely played, some kind of amount.
Right.
Now, but I also think that there should be a threshold, right? So let's say group A pulls the mob, they're all fighting, group B joins in, but group B does 1% of the damage and group A does 99% of the damage. then did Group B really add anything to the? Not really. So I think that there's some math calculations that they're going to have to do, because you don't want like Group B coming, stay way in the back, and then I'm going to shoot my bow and arrow at them, right?
Mhm.
Sniper shot, and there now our whole group is going to get part of this loot, even though we didn't do anything to help. Now, does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's my take on it. And the thing is, I don't ever think that it should be solely dependent on how much DPS you did, because if you don't have a healer, you're dead. Unless you're one-shotting, and I don't see any boss mobs in Ashes being able to be one-shotted.
Right. That makes sense. Vertec, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the concern that you had there is kind of what they were referring to mainly in the post was like whoever, the term whoever is kind of used for whatever party, or if it's two individuals. If it's one individual, then they tag it and then they would get that 10% bump. But if it's a party, then the entire party gets that 10% bump initially. But for the rest of it, I do like the idea, and I've kind of had the same thing that I've said a couple times where, yeah, I think that there should be a little bit more in the range of calculating in damage as well as effective healing. Not really total healing output, but effective healing, and tank threat should all be calculated in as well. Because otherwise it's going to end up being, it could potentially be lopsided. And if a group is trying to steamroll through with a bunch of damage dealers and they're just, we're going to everybody focus the healers first, and then go after the damage dealers, and then go after the tank who's going to be sitting there trying to do stuff, but whatever, we'll just steamroll everybody else and take over the boss kill, and we'll be fine.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing that becomes, because it is a PvX, or really PvP world, right? Is that we could be fighting one of the big dragons, right? Which is a very scripted fight. There's a lot of moving parts that you have to do to navigate through it. And then another raid force comes, and instead of, maybe one person in the raid force will engage with the boss mob, just so that it gets, like they've basically acknowledged that it's there, and now they're part of that fight. And then everybody else in the whole raid force starts killing off the first raid force that was there. Right. So it's almost like they're stealing the mob from them. And that's a big worry that I have, because that would make it kind of toxic, in my opinion. Do you know what I mean? It's like one thing if you just jump in and you guys are going to help. That's great. Everybody gets to, benefit from it. But it's another thing entirely if you decide to, their health they're getting hit, their wards are going down, we can basically backstab them all and kill them, and then take the entire mob for ourselves. So I wish that Ashes had some way where that could be protected, where it's not possible. Like once you engage with a boss mob, a raid boss or something, that it makes you, like, in that area, it becomes a no PvP zone or something. I don't know how they could possibly do it. I don't know if they want to do it, but I think that would be something that's really important, because it would be horrible if you're fighting a mob that takes like 45 minutes to take down, and then the last 15 minutes, another raid force comes and stabs you in the back and kills you, and then takes your mob.
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting situation seeing how all that works out. Because yeah, like you said, there's definitely some heavy math and considerations to take in mind when designing that system, and how loot is going to be given out.
Right. Absolutely. Well, in that situation, if they're all dead, they wiped. It's just they didn't wipe to the mob. They wiped to fellow players, right? So that's part of the risk. So it'll be interesting I don't think they've really addressed how they're going to handle that. So I can't even give a reaction to, because I don't know what they're going to do yet, because they probably haven't gotten that far yet, is my guess. Probably that's something that they will dig into in Alpha 2, which I'm so excited.
Yes. So many things that they need to even have like a solid reveal on. So there's gonna be so much new stuff coming up. It's gonna be insane. Once the
Absolutely.
ball starts rolling.
That's right. It's great that they're doing, Alpha 2 and gonna actually, you see so many games these days who release so early and they don't test anything, and then it's a mess. So I think what Ashes is doing is phenomenal with testing everything and really taking their time.
My opinion on it is I agree with Des Revis, just to try and catch up on chat since it's been a minute. Des Revis, well, actually, first Faisal says, doesn't only one group get loot? I believe so, but I'm hoping not. It would be nice to have some loot dependent on your amount that you've attacked it or something. Ideally, just otherwise you're getting nothing out of it, kind of thing. And then Desreva says, needs to be weighted to the first strike, but balanced to the 80% contribution, including effective heals to your party. But then the game also needs to have internal DPS, HPS meters influencing the tables. And we know how a lot of people feel about DPS meters. But I do agree with that. I feel like just basing it off of damage, while Intrepid is doing something primarily different when it comes to the way that their healers work, in terms of the cleric is intended to be more so attacking people to then heal. I think that might change a little bit more of quote unquote how much damage I will do as a healer, for example, but I think that that's still something even tanks need to consider, or people that maybe aren't doing as much damage because they're support like bards. I think that's all stuff. That's all stuff that we have to consider, And then Maltori, welcome in. First off, thank you for the follow. Says, remember though, the biggest detractor of PK is the corruption system, which yes, we're hoping that the corruption system does its job. And we're going to be able to see and test it in Alpha 2. And I am excited to see how that goes. And sorry about the issue with our VTubers. I guess the VTuber server is having an issue. So we're back up now, but that's why we went away for a second. I don't know what happened there. But my opinion overall is yes, I pretty much agree with what Chad is saying. The healer should have a consideration for this. So that brings us on to, because there's a second part to this. Even if the tank healer support gets the initial tag and therefore the tag benefit, does that mean that the 5 to 10% subject to change bump in overall damage done to the mob or boss will be enough to have them end up as top DPS after the kill? Another way of looking at it is Steven is saying that damage dealers or groups that are damage dealer heavy are only going to do approximately 5 to 10% more damage than a tank healer support or tank healer support group. So in general, they're worried about damage dealing groups out damaging a tank healer support heavy group, and thus taking over. Even if they were the first ones to tag the tank healer support group, they would be overtaken by the damage dealing group in damage percentages. And that's a concern that they have. Oh my goodness. Des Revis, thank you so much. Cheers.
Thank you. Much appreciated, friend.
Welcome into all of our new patrons. We greatly appreciate that. And I just want to do a quick plug real quick. First off, Des Revis is a part of a really good community that I think is in association with Shakacon's community.
That's correct.
And yes. They're very sweet as well. I like Revis Order. And the subscriptions at the moment, we have a goal of getting to 150 total subs, and that money will go towards us sending a PC to somebody in the community who is in need of a PC upgrade, as a way to give back to you guys. So I love it. I love just seeing the community work together. Honestly, that's my favorite part. It's just like knowing that you guys are working with Revis Order and that, you know, we're all supportive of each other. That's been my favorite part with everything to do with the Ashes community. And Maltori, thank you so much for the subscription. Cheers for that.
Thank you. Much appreciated to you as well.
Oh my
And
gosh.
what?
Thank you.
Thank you again. Times 10 more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Des
far
went
too
into our Kingdom Project Discord channel, and he posted for your podcast there.
Aw.
So everyone
Aw.
would join.
Thank you, Des. That's super nice. That's super nice.
He's a great guy.
Maltori says
Absolutely.
it's a good cause, so F yeah. And Peon says I'm not supportive of dwarves. Poor dwarves, man. Poor dwarves. You guys are awesome. Thank you. But yeah, sorry. To get back on track, do you think that that should be a concern? Should we be worried about damage dealers outdoing damage to us tank healer support peoples?
I think that, well, first of all, your healer, if they're doing damage, they're not doing their job. They need to be healing, right? Primarily. Healer is only going to be damaging if they have heals that, see, I only play healers and mages in every game I play. I try and experiment with the other things. I don't like them. I always play healers. I always play healers. And my mage is always a glass cannon. So she puts out a ton of damage, but if she gets hit one time, she's dead. And then my healers are all heal spec'd, because as much as I might enjoy doing DPS as a healer, the mage I'm going to keep alive or the ranger I'm going to keep alive is going to do 10 times more. That's kind of my philosophy. It's just my own personal philosophy.
I agree.
I think that the thing is I think that instead of saying, let's look at how much damage is done to this mob, maybe they should take each class, right? And they see how active was this particular person. Was this person constantly casting heals or cures or reses, right?
Mhm.
Or was the person just standing there, and not doing a lot? Was the tank actively taunting and attacking the mob in place, or was the tank just kind of hanging out? Right. And then were the DPSers, were they attacking the mob and doing damage, or were they just kind of doing nothing but standing there? Maybe instead of doing it based on how much damage you dealt, do it how many interactions did you have within this event?
Right. I agree with you. I do. I am a healer main. I've always played healer. Vertec is a tank. I'm a healer. That's actually why we work together really well as a couple. But my only counter is Disc Priest in World of Warcraft, where the purpose is to put a bunch of I forgot what the word is right now, but like the yellow things around people, shields, and you do damage and it heals people that have the shields on them. And that is kind of, it's not one-to-one, but that is kind of the same vibe that I'm getting from Ashes of Creation, especially back when we first, back when they were first talking about all their different classes from the Kickstarter era and things like that, where they said that they don't want the healers to be standing in the back just healing there. They want them to be a little bit more frontline and a little bit more active. And so that's kind of where my brain is going with Ashes of Creation.
Right.
Being a bit more, doing more damage instead of my usual holy priest in World of Warcraft, where I was just kind of in the back and just like popping off heals, And so that's what I'm trying to consider is like, with that in mind, do we need to worry about damage dealers outdoing it? But I do agree that, you know, if done correctly, instead of just looking at damage, looking at total effort done during a fight, you know, instead of just damage done, I think that's a much more fair way, because again, we have our support who may not be doing any damage or healing, they're just buffing and debuffing.
Right.
And
Right.
you've got your tanks who are threat mitigating and damage mitigating and things like that. So yeah, it's a really good point. Oh boy, there I go again.
Oh, did
Uh-oh.
you get kicked off?
Womp womp.
Yep, I left the collab again.
Yeah, it seems like servers are unstable right now over in Steam.
Yeah, that's what VTube Studio is saying, that there's a Steam connection failure. So,
Womp
oh my boy.
womp.
Wait. Oh, okay. Sorry. I saw something about a success. Thank you guys. Level 5 hype train complete at 7%. Thank you guys so much. It's okay. You will just hear me through the void. I am the disembodied voice of Chibi. It is fine.
But yeah, I think
you've gone to the next plane, Chibi. That's all.
Exactly.
She
I'm
has
just
ascended.
plane traveling.
Wait. I know what I can do here. Got a cardboard cutout.
Oh boy. Thank you. Appreciate that. Don't mind my deadpan straightforward stare. Just
I was gonna say you're gonna have resting not impressed face. Fine though, it's fine.
Oh my gosh.
But
We need a clear can hear stat. Oh my gosh.
Loudy. But yeah, I don't know. I think a difference of only 5% is going to be a very gracious window of damage done. If they're talking about the difference between a full tilt, like very damage heavy, and then like a quote unquote properly balanced, because that could also mean the difference between like bringing, I don't know, a heavy DPS, one of the biggest just pure numbers but glass cannon DPSs, versus bringing, you know, another bard or a summoner that's
Right.
going to be just filling a blank, quote unquote. Like just drop out the summoner, bring an extra mage because the mage has the, you know, the pure damage numbers, and that as a group would probably boost it up at least a couple 3% to 4%.
Yeah.
Just by replacing that out, at least in if they're following some of the typical like setups for purposes of a class, the more utility they have, the more damage output they're gonna have, you know.
Right. And the thing is, Steven likes every class having a purpose, right? And for there to be a given need. And I think if they did it to entirely based on the highest DPS, then like you said, raids are going to like do bare minimum healers, bare minimum buffers, and just have all DPS classes, right? Your tier 1 DPS, and that's it. And then all of a sudden, there's going to be a lot of classes that aren't getting included. And I don't see Steven liking that, just because he likes to have a cohesive group where everyone is needed. So I think that if they started to see that trend, then they would change how they're calculating.
Yeah.
I mean, time will tell, because there's also, I've always been a big proponent of saying that there's not going to be like a meta in the game, like a meta group that's not going to exist. It's going to be based a lot on the situation, what you're trying to accomplish, where you're trying to go, because it might even be like a mage might need to pick a different secondary just purely because of the specific dungeon they're going into, and that would be the better one to go with. So if your goal is to swoop in, slay an entire party or raid or whatever, and take over a boss kill that's like half dead or whatnot, it might be more efficient to bring pure damage classes more so than the say the summoner, who could have an ability that's really great for group play when you're looking at the long-term fight or whatever.
Should we just call that loot wars then?
Loot wars.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. That would be a loot war.
Yeah. But also, one thing to keep in mind with the clerics is apparently, from what Steven's been saying, is clerics are going to have to do damage in order to be able to heal. Like it's going to be a core
Mhm.
component to build up some resources and whatnot to be able to make use of your heals fully. You're going to have to do some damaging.
Right.
So
Well, and that's the thing. Like within Alpha 1, right? Because we got to play a healer in Alpha 1. Everybody did that did Alpha
Mhm.
1. And that's not under NDA, so I'm allowed to talk about it.
Right.
And they had certain attacks that you do this attack, and then that's going to increase the amount of heals that you can do to the mob, right? Or to the tank who's fighting the mob. And, and it's like in EverQuest, I play a Defiler. So I have a ton of spells that I cast that aren't straight up heals. They're damage ones, but then they siphon heals from the mob as they damage them. So you're doing damage, but you're not really doing damage for damage purpose. You're doing damage because it's going to result in either procs or heals that are going to
Right.
help everybody in the group.